morning, Great. Good morning, Great Britain and Europe. This is the first in our live streaming. I don't expect too many people because we announced it early this morning in England or Great Britain. The purpose of this live stream is to gather our gang together. If you're a young gal and you have a toddler and you're living in Tollsbury and you have a job, how much money do you work? You have to put your child in a daycare center. It costs hundreds of dollars, and you have to sit there and watch somebody else raise your child. You pick her up after daycare, and you take her home and put her to sleep, and you get up the next day and you take her back to a child care center. Well, how much money do you earn, and how much money do you pay for rent and groceries? I guarantee you it's not working out. The opposite of that is home economics, where the married couple is viewed as a base economic thing. They're viewed as one person, and the husband makes enough dollar bills or English pounds to to support a wife and child. And how about you if you're the boy? If you're working at a job, after you get your paycheck, how much money are you paying on rent and groceries? Can you afford to support a wife and children? There's a word for people who can't do that. They're called peasants or peons, and you're not called a peon for nothing, bub. We have a couple of YouTube channels. I don't think anyone's ever actually watched them. And here we're going to repeat some things from them. But the whole point is to get you to go on live chat and join the gang in the playground. This is how much money I make. This isn't working out. And then we'll put you to work. Well, how do you straighten things out? If you're a young gal, or if you're a mother, a single mom, and somebody said, how much of a budget do you need to run a household? Well, how much money do you need? And if you're a guy, how many hours do you have to work at your job in order to come up with that budget? Home economics, remember, the home economics is when the married couple is viewed as a base economic unit. This is coming to you here from Tucson, Arizona, and in the post-World War II United States, there's the detached house. And you picture a detached house. It had a living room to live in, and a bedroom, and a dining room to eat in, and a kitchen that supplies the dining room, and a backyard to live in. And that's the smallest economic thing. That's the opposite of poverty. That's what gets you out of poverty and into plenty. And so you picture a young couple there and go off to the side and start with farming and mining. Then above that, manufacturing, and above that, wholesale, retail, and repair. And above that, retirement, education, and recreation. And then the doctors and lawyers form a kind of lattice that holds it all together. And it's the Catholic priest that causes everything to come into being. It's a God and country thing. You literally arrange things all the way up to getting into heaven after you die. And so where do you fit in on that? We need to start putting numbers into it. I wouldn't go to the statistics from government. I don't think they're trustable anymore. But you're the one living it. You're the young gal there, and it's up to you to say, this is the budget I need. And it's up to you, the young man, to say, this is how many hours I need to work. And so if you're listening to this, please pass the word. We'll come in and we'll start gathering up our gang and putting two and two together. We'll start putting numbers on this. If you're listening to this, and there's the house that this is being filmed in, the house behind me. Well, this house was a house I grew up in, and it was built in the late 40s, early 50s. Our dad was a repairman. This is a 3-bedroom brick house in a half-acre lot. And the fact that that shows you how strong home economics is. It was unique in the history of human beings on this earth that somebody who was a repairman could afford to live like that. A couple of doors down was a milkman, if you know what a milkman is. Next door is a plumber. A couple of school teachers. Up the road was a guy who worked in a feed store. And they all were the middle class. Our definition of middle class was different and unique throughout the history of everything else, all the other countries in the world. That home economics is what made the United States such a magical place to live. They threw it out. Home economics is a religious thing. In the end, it's a Catholic thing. You require the couple to practice virtues, to be married and practice virtues. They are first normal and well-adjusted, and then they become a good wife and husband, and then a good mother and father, and they chose to be a housewife as a profession, and they're good citizens. Our mom came over here from England after World War II ended, and she came over here to be a professional housewife. And those gals are in a completely different world than what you live in today. They did an awfully good job of it. Kids had shoes on their feet. They went to a dentist. They were raised to be normal and well-adjusted. They had good nutrition. That's not the world we live in today. Today, we live in a world of a peasant and property class society. And you guys pretty much came up with all this. It was Aristotle and Plato and those guys that came up with the idea that you should be normal and well-adjusted. It's the Christ and the Pope and that sort of thing that said, well, you have to dot the letter I, and it's a God and country thing. It's the British Catholics, it's the Great Britain characters that put it all together and came up with judges and home economics. And so you guys are considered one extreme or the other. It's just the way it is. In my school days, a few decades back, Great Britain was considered about a decade or 15 years ahead of the United States. We would do everything Great Britain did 15 years back. It takes us a while to catch up to you. I think we've done that. And so I'm hoping you'll go out and start gathering people and bringing them into our group, and you start insisting on home economics. One of the things it's fun to point out that's an interest to you is judges. The reason judges in the United States wear black robes is because Catholic priests 500 years ago in England wore black robes. You guys developed, it might be the Catholic Church that developed rules of evidence, but they were British Catholics. It was you guys and your famous lawyers that put those books together, whose name I forgot. It's you that wears those funny hats and came up with the jury systems and that sort of thing. And you can see the split. They used to have a judicial court. A judicial means to establish facts that are true as true. And it's as opposed to a sophistical court, which means to establish facts that aren't true as true. And the overwhelming history of human beings on this earth is a sophistical court. To have a judicial court is very unique. And you threw that out. We did too. We did that in the United States in the 1970s. In the 1950s, the Communist Party in the United States said they would overthrow the US by about the year 1973. They would take over the courts and the press. They would take over the school system and raise a generation that can't read or write. And by 1973, they did. 1973 was, if I listened to them right, the year of the highest standard of living in the United States. And from there was a major upheaval in our society, and it turned into the laissez-faire. They cashed in on everything, individual rights, and the rich got richer and the poor got poor in the most stereotypical sense of the word. Those guys got into all the golden real estate they could get their hands on, and now they rent property to us, and we're a class of peasants. There's also an emotion to that, isn't there? There are some things you can't do and not be a scoundrel. And they were very good at that. And so the idea is to get you guys to go back to being a judicial court, at least publicize it. Feminism is one of the ways of seeing that. In the 70s, there was tennis. You guys invented the darn thing. There's Billie Jean King, forgive me. She was a pillar of the women's liberation movement. It's also, and so what did they do? There was quite, I don't know if her personally, that's what the rumors are, so I apologize, but it was so common for those gals to do things such as take male steroids that so many of them, an unusual number of them, became lesbians. And they also had a chance at the time to practice. They had 8 hours a day. And they became professional tennis players. They also used Virginia Slim cigarettes at a time when everybody was trying to keep people from smoking. Well, they didn't think twice about it. And so who did they push out? Well, they pushed out the American housewife. The tennis should be an amateur thing. And so you would think of the gal being a normal, well-adjusted person, and that's what makes up a citizen. And then she might be a professional housewife. And then once the kids are grown and they have some time to go out and play tennis, and the idea is to arrange parameters of competition so that that gal makes enough money to go join a club and play tennis all day long if she wants, or while the kids are at school. And she gets to play in that tennis tournament. So there would be a professional person, a professional housewife, and then an amateur tennis player. And that was the gals that were pushed out of society. And along with that, kids were plunged into poverty. They're the gals that went and asked the 10-year-old what he wants for his birthday. And you can see what happened. The point here is nightmarish, isn't it? The women's liberation movement didn't discriminate in favor of women or against women, but rather in favor of women who were malicious and against women who were practicing virtues. If you practice virtues, then other people are made better off. If you practice vice or not virtues, other people are hurt. And that's just the way that's what happened. If you're sitting here and you're in London or Edinburgh, you're paying a horrible price for this. You're being plunged into poverty. Let's say that one again, because it's kind of important. There was home economics. So at that time, hubby had an income and he could support a wife and 2.2 children, as they say, in a 3-bedroom brick house and a half-acre lot. And then the gal went out into the workplace. But the bum's rush is they didn't enter the workplace. They were the consumption society. So their income wasn't part of paying the gas bill. Their income was a consuming thing. And that, along with the attitude, the idea of mental illness being from a cold to the flu to pneumonia, and that attitude, the complete absence of caring or love and that sort of thing, they put their 2 incomes together and they went out and bought a duplex and started renting out property to other people. They invested in things such as a fast food joint, and instead of the owner operator, they would hire somebody to work in their fast food joints, and they reinstitutionalized teenagers back into the workplace. You know, I get the idea. They became the upper class in a peasant and property class society. And how come in the United States they got away with it? And the answer is you couldn't shove religion down their throat, but they could shove whatever they want to call it down everyone else's throat. There's nothing you can do about it. One thing leads to the other, doesn't it? When courts in the United States, one of the Twilight Zone moments in the United States was when courts came out and said, we shall have no religion in government, period. Oh, that's a bum's rush. The truth of the matter is that's a very stereotypical, straight out of the textbook definition of a satanic church. the complete absence of God and country. God and country is made up of those three things: throwing out God, throwing out that dot in the letter I, or arranging things to get to heaven after you die, separating the act of sex from the act of getting the gal pregnant, and willing the good of another person. It turns into a normal supply and demand curve, willing the good of another person. Those three things are the shop manual definition of home economics, of what I think of when I think of democracy. If you're a highbrow type, I believe that's the fourth and fifth way of St. Thomas Aquinas that have fancy names, but are more affectionately called the truth of the truth and the decent of the decent. Yeah, the gal who changes the dirty diapers gets the sex. The priest who takes a vow of poverty maximizes profits. And it just goes on from there, doesn't it? If the shop manual definition of, both the Catholic and the atheist define the shop manual definition of mental illness as the normal taken into the abnormal, from a cold to the flu to pneumonia. The Catholics say, oh, no, wait a minute, go backwards. Go back to normal. Normal is normal, but not good enough. For example, all these very strong, powerful thoughts that fly through a young man's head having to do with pretty young gals, well, it's simply to associate those thoughts and actions with actually getting her pregnant isn't a natural thing at all. It's originals, and there I understand what original sin is with a snap of a finger. Without being too earthy, sit in a chair, fantasize about the gals until you become sexually aroused. Open your eyes, look around the room, do it again, only this time you're fantasizing about actually getting the gal pregnant. And there you go. Sex education would be getting some money in the bank, placing so you can have something to get married on. You would associate that actual child with the pleasures of sex and the romance of the gal, and they line up. If you remove the child and the pleasures of sex, you have that romance stuff. That's a Catholic nun. They try to be a perfect person, and they're a mother to society. And if I put that part of that mind and that at the top of society, and then we have a large middle class, and kids have shoes on their feet, and people start to have recreation time, and it just goes on from there. So this is the very first live stream, and we only publicized it, I guess, about 8 o'clock London time, Greenwich Village time, as they say. So I'm hoping you'll hear this and you'll pass the word. And then we'll start to gather our gang. Well, good luck to you. And we'll hope to see you tomorrow. It's Saturday at 7 o'clock, and then tomorrow, Sunday, at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. So we hope to see you tomorrow. Goodbye.